All right, so the following is a description of the major models and structures within the urinary system. This is the right kidney. This is the left kidney. These are the suprarenal or adrenal glands that sit atop the kidneys, and in their cortical region release over 2 dozen corticosteroids related to the endocrine function. They're also going to, in the medulla, be related to the sympathetic response and the release of catecholamines into the bloodstream during that fight or flight response. You can tell that you're looking at the front side of the kidneys because you can see the vein sitting superficial. The renal vein on either side here feeds into the hilum or hilus of the kidney on both sides. Sitting actually posterior to that would be the renal artery. And below these two, and usually more posterior, would be the renal pelvis that's basically being fed filtrate by the collecting areas within the kidney. You can see right here on the back side of the kidney these collecting areas. So this would be the cortex of the kidney. This would be the minor calyx or calyces. These would be major, each of the larger areas, and those feed into the urinary structures below, which would be the renal pelvis. And from this point on, you would have a lining that changes into transitional epithelial tissue through the ureter down into the urinary bladder and out through the urethra below. Okay, so each of those areas would be lined with transitional epithelia, and then on the exiting of this system, you would have in that moist body opening non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. All right, so this is the abdominal aorta. These are the renal arteries, renal veins that dump back into the inferior vena cava and back up into the right atrium of the heart, and the various structures on the overall model that we've just described. As we look at an individual kidney, this would be showing the backside of the right kidney, because we can see instead of the renal vein being superficial, you see the renal artery and renal pelvis here. And so this is the backside of your right side kidney. It would be lower than the left side because the right lobe of the liver would be pushing it down in that right lumbar region. The kidney, again, would be found in the right and left lumbar region of the abdominal cavity in the ventral body cavity. You can see a number of things on this model. You can see the blood vessels that branch out and supply all the way to the glomerulus, right? So this is the overall kidney. This is the cortex, cortical region out here. This is where all of the renal corpuscles that we'll describe in a moment would be found. And then we have the medullary pyramids located further into the kidney. And out on the surface right here, you can see the renal capsule that encompasses the entire organ. This is a retroperitoneal organ, which means it sits against the posterior body wall, and mesothelium would cover its surface in the form of a visceral and parietal layer, but it would have a layer already on it, and so it's referred to as a retroperitoneal organ because of the mesentery that covers its surface prior to being housed by the serous membranes. You can see also from the other model, the larger structures here. This would be the collecting area for all of the collecting tubules that are fed by the filtration units out here. So the cortical region is where we would find renal corpuscles, which would be Bowman's capsules, and the glomeruli. It is also where we would find the proximal convoluted tubules and the distal convoluted tubules. If you look up here at this model, there's a close-up of it. Right here you can see these are the corpuscles, the Bowman's capsule and the glomeruli together, and then the proximal convoluted tubules in this picture would be yellow, and the white would be the end of the line, and this nephron, the distal convoluted tubule that feeds into the collecting tubule and down into the duct. You see that also on this model right here. One of these renal medullary pyramids has been taken out, blown up, and we have that represented here. Before we do that, though, let's look at the blood vessels here. This is the renal artery. The flow of blood into these structures would be then into a segmental artery, which then feeds into a lobar branch that's going to come up here to the base of the renal column. The renal column would have an interlobar vessel that then feeds into an arcuate artery, and that arcuate artery then gives rise to what feeds the glomerulus in the form of either the cortical radiate blood vessel right there. It's also referred to as the interlobular artery, but cortical radiate is the common contemporary terminology. So The cortical radiate arteries would then feed the afferent arteriole and into the glomerulus where filtration occurs under hydrostatic pressure, and the efferent arterioles would then exit that same structure once filtration has occurred in that location. So if we take one of these out, this structure here, this is one medullary pyramid, and we blow it up, it's going to look like this. Out here we have again the renal capsule, the visceral peritoneum, or the mesothelial layer. We have here the segmental the interlobar arteries that feed here up around the medullary pyramid, and then arc in the arcuate artery around that medullary pyramid, separating the juxtamedullary portion that we see here, the cortex, from the medulla. Notice the medulla, below this point, you only have tubules, either thin segments made up of squamous epithelia, or thicker segments that you have in the ascending limb here that are cuboidal. You also would have some columnar line structures as the collecting ducts get larger and larger. These collecting ducts, once the urine is concentrated enough and prepared to leave the body, would move down through these papillary openings and into the minor calyx. This is a blown up version of the minor calyx that feeds into the major calyx and into the renal pelvis down into the urinary bladder via the ureter. Okay, so notice that all of the renal corpuscles right here are in the cortical region, and those renal corpuscles again are comprised of both the Bowman's capsule and its connection to the proximal convoluted tubule, as well as the glomerulus that we see here blown up right next to it. So if I were to take this cortical region and blow up one of these filtering units, renal corpuscles, that's what you see here. We do that because adjacent to the Bowman's capsule right here that you see lined with simple squamous epithelia, you have a pair of structures right here and right here that form what's referred to as the JG apparatus. The afferent arteriole, the larger of these two blood vessels, is fed by the cortical radiate artery, and it has in its walls stretch receptors referred to as JG cells, juxtaglomerular cells, that will determine whether or not blood pressure is high enough and determine this through stretch in the walls. If there is no stretch, then renin will be released. Renin, or this overall structure, and the release of renin helps to monitor systemic blood pressure and control GFR immediately. So that's a stretch receptor. This is the modified distal convoluted tubule, and if we go back over to this, in the overall nephron structure, we can see that the nephron begins at the corpuscle, is feeding into the proximal convoluted tubule, descends down the descending limb, and releases water on the way down, concentrating the urine through this thin segment, and then it begins to ascend, makes it impermeable to water, and starts bringing in sodium chloride on the way back up. So osmolality will increase going down and decrease going back up as you dilute it again. This is a countercurrent multiplier, the countercurrent exchange, that's going to help monitor and control fluid and electrolyte balance in the body. We'll get into that more in just a moment, or in a later video. Notice how the distal convoluted tubule at the top of the ascending limb is going to pass right back by where blood came into that filtering unit at the afferent arteriole, and if we blow that small combination of structures up and look at this, this is the JG apparatus once again. This is the wall of the distal convoluted tubule. It has a large